You know, I could listen to that song all night. I'll bet they're out there right now dancing. You know, there's a song that makes your blackjack and it makes your liver quiver. Good evening, folks, and welcome back, everybody. I'm Tom. This is the simulcast up and running now for February the 8th, 1995, tonight with Dan Rather from the CBS News headquarters in New York City and Roosevelt Grier from our studios here in Southern California. You know, last Friday night here, in an effort to keep the ship moving forward, Joe Stein, who was one of our property men here, came and he said, how about if we had a little party after the show on Friday night in the studio with some booze and some sandwiches? I said, that sounds fine. He said, could you make a percentage of the contribution to the party? I said, of course. I said, what would my percentage be? He said, 100. And it was so great that I sought out Joe tonight with a contribution of 110%, and I said, this week, let's get 2 sandwiches, because everybody went hungry here last week. So you're all invited to come in, by the way, on Friday night here at TV City, if you can find it, which brings up the following point. Last Friday, we did a show here with Larry King, the Iron Horse of broadcasting, and a fellow watched it, and he sent in a letter. He said, you know, you gave us a fax number, you gave us a telephone number, you gave us a, what is the service, the Prodigy number. He said, what is the address, just the ordinary mailing address if we want to write you just a regular letter that's not a phone call, a fax, or a computer? I said, the address is as follows. It'll be the Late Late Show with T.S. You can find us at CBS Television City, 7800 Beverly Boulevard, Suite room 244. That was the other place. And Los Angeles, California, 90036. A number of you have called in here saying that when you videotape this program, you upcut the program, you don't hear the entire beginning of the show and the theme music in its exciting entirety. So I found out that I've been giving you the wrong start time because I've left off the 4-second delay. It's not 12:37:23. It's 12:37:28 is when to set your videotape machines. And it's not 12:35:59 when we go off. It's 12:36:04. So make that note. I listened to Paul Harvey on the radio today, and he talked about New York City. About 2 years ago, they spent $12 million for 4 new fireboats to operate in the East River and the Hudson to put out shoreline fires. And these were state-of-the-art fireboats made out of fiberglass. They're now on sale for whatever New York City can get, because when the fiberglass boats get too close to the fire, they melt. What is going on? And finally, you know, it doesn't take a lot to steam me these days. In fact, I wake up steamed in the morning. Yesterday, I got the car back from Cadillac, all shined and all polished and absolutely in showroom condition. What was the percentage of rain in the forecast here yesterday morning? It was 0, right?
Correct.
Last night, it rained here to beat the band. The car is filthy again. And you don't know this. I told the folks at Cable, in a previous lifetime, I went to bed with a holy person. And she wasn't happy about this, and I've been paying for it ever since. Hey. And you want to trade places with this. Dan Rather is first up from CBS News headquarters in New York, and then on to Roosevelt Grier, all with the magic of your phone calls on the toll-free highway for a Wednesday night. Fire up a simultini and watch the pictures as they fly through the air. It is always a personal treat to chat with Dan Rather over the years, but tonight it's especially nice because it's our first time as a member of the CBS family. Dan Rather is with us tonight from the set of the CBS Evening News in New York City, and I thank you, my friend, for staying up very late and for performing well above the call of duty for CBS tonight. It's good to see you.
Oh, Tom, good to see you. You know I'd crawl on hot lava for you anytime.
You know, you can get that funny stuff in 48 hours, you know.
Yeah, we might do a little better against ER, I agree.
Listen, before we start with the news here, it's been a busy day for the CBS Evening News set. The news program originated from there tonight, and I saw you with friend Dave here on the top 10 list just an hour ago.
Is he something else or what?
Yeah, he's something else. When they come to you with these ideas, how do they present them to you? I mean, how do they sell you on this one?
Well, they didn't have to sell me. You know, I love David as you do. And what generally happens, they say, listen, we have an idea, let's bounce it past you. If you like it, why do it. If you don't, we'll do it anyway. No, if it's something that's okay with the boss, Eric Ober, who runs this place. And by the way, Tom, I noticed in that address that you have a room. I mean, I have a suite. David Letterman has a whole building. You mean to tell me you only have a room out there?
We are the tail, sir. I'll tell you the one that we especially liked tonight was number 6, and with or without your permission, we're going to play it. Number 6.
Number 6.
Maybe Letterman ought to spend some of that big-time TV money on better wigs.
Wow. Before we get to the news, I'm told that you just came back from a trip down home to Texas with your daughter and that you found some new loves there.
Well, Tom, I'm really pleased that you raised that. I know, you're a big city guy, but, there's a world out there that loves you. I took a trip in the Texas Panhandle. Now, think about the map, Look
Sure.
Way up in the Texas Panhandle, Amarillo. I went with my daughter, Robin. We went to Amarillo to see the Great Plains Museum, which you may not have heard of. It was one of America's great treasures. We went to the Cowgirl Hall of Fame in Hereford, Texas. Would you believe that their football team is called the Whitefaces, the Hereford Whitefaces? There's a Whiteface, Texas, and their team is called the Whiteface Herefords. They used to play one another. This story has the added advantage of being true.
Yeah.
But when I was out there, I discovered, I found the Hank Williams. I claim to have found the Hank Williams of the 1990s, my friend Jimmy Dale Gilmore, who you ought to have on the program sometime. But I found out there the Pavarotti of the Panhandle.
Really?
Absolute wow man called Terry Allen. He sings operas such as When Joe Bob Went Bad. He has one, Give Me a Ride to Heaven, Boy, which is subtitled, this is a quote, The Hitchhiking Jesus, unquote. He has the true story of when the great Art Ark crashed and burned on the Texas-New Mexico border. I mean, you don't find this stuff around.
No, you sure don't. You sure don't. Maybe Jesse Helms was right about you. And tell me about the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. What is this? Would be a Hall of Fame of cowgirls, I guess.
It is, and this is not apocryphal. It really exists in Hereford, Texas, and it's a wonderful little museum. And I'll tell you a quick story which will give you some appreciation for it. People are so genuine there. This is, the cowgirls who perform at rodeos and work ranches, and they have a Hall of Fame. They've outgrown their museum in Hereford, and after I'd been there about 20 minutes, a woman came up and said, are you Dan Rather? And I said, I am. And she said, I have good news. The Cowgirl Hall of Fame may be moving to Fort Worth. Exclamation point. I said, well, okay. She said, they're going to move us to the stockyards. She said it with such sincerity. Now, this is a bulletin. You heard it here first. We're breaking this story on your air. The Cowgirl Hall of Fame in Hereford, Texas, may be moving to the stockyards in Fort Worth.
Let me take you to some real news here, which you make your living reporting to the nation and commenting on radio and television. There is a passage in the O.J. Simpson book, which is just out, in which he says, Dan Rather hurt me by saying I had 9 or 10 incidents involving my wife, and why doesn't he get the number correct? Has he got a point there, and do you feel you hurt him?
I have no idea. This much I know. I read that. And look, I think the record would show, don't read my lips, read my record, that CBS News and I have made an extraordinary effort to be fair to O.J. Simpson and to be fair to the late Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman and to everybody in this case. Now, I believe what he's referring to is the night of the Bronco chase. Mm-hmm. It was reported to us, and we checked as best we could, and it turned out to be correct, that there'd been, I believe the quote was, 8 or 9 times in which spousal abuse had been alleged.
Right.
Now, it turns out that was correct. I know Johnny Cochran. I've known him a long time. I don't know O.J. Simpson well. I have met him. Frankly, they're in a very tough situation. O.J. Simpson has, a lot at stake in this trial. And quite honestly, I can forgive them almost anything that applies to me. It's no big deal with me. We've done a really good job of trying to check everything out. And if we've made some mistakes, then we need to be held responsible for them. But I don't think we made a mistake in that case.
How disturbed are you, as some others are? I touched upon this the other night with Dominic Dunn. And the only word I can put to it here is the entertainmentization of news, where we are covering this trial almost as if it is a movie in the process of being made.
Look, Tom, I think the case has been vastly overcovered, and some of the quality of the coverage has been poor. I don't accept myself or CBS News in that criticism. I'd like to think we've done a better job than most, if not all others, but we've made our mistakes as well. This is a great story.
It's got everything. It's got everything.
Oh, it's got everything going for it. The challenge is to cover it well and not to overcover it. And the point is that none of us have done that very well. You know, everybody in the news business, you know this, Tom, you spent a large portion of your career in news. All of us are struggling every day, no matter how it may look on the outside. You know, what is news? News is what's, on the basis of our experience, what's interesting and or important. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes you get a story like the O.J. Simpson case, which this case is really interesting. Honest people can disagree about whether it's important or not. Certainly, it's not as important as China on the brink of becoming a world economic and military superpower. It's not as important what's happening in the Balkans, but on some days, on most days, it's a whole lot more interesting. So everybody in the news business, I'm not talking about people who are in the entertainment business trying to sort of pass off as a news program or news people, but everybody in the news business is trying every day to balance what's interesting against what is important. Now, it is true that everybody in the news business feels this tremendous competitive pressure to produce in the ratings. And there's no doubt that Simpson coverage spikes the ratings. And that's a force to be reckoned with in every newsroom, including our own. I mean, I can't duck it.
Sure, I understand. We've talked about this before. You're competitive.
Absolutely. You got to be. And if you say on anybody's evening news, Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings, everybody has the same problem. Say, boy, we can't lead with the O.J. Simpson case again tonight, can we? Or I don't want to do it. And somebody will say, but wait a minute. You know, every time you lead with it, the numbers are spiked up. So that's the reality. None of this is my way of excuse. I hope it's my way of explanation.
No, it really is.
There's a long way to go in this trial.
Because the problem here is we all know the people involved in this case. We know F. Lee Bailey. We didn't know Johnny Cochran. We know Bob Shapiro. We know O.J. Simpson. We know the people involved here in this case. And everybody wants to get as much information. And, of course, everybody would like the judgment to be rendered tomorrow. We're eager to find out how this thing will finally play out. And it's going to take some time for that to happen. You and I both know that.
That's true. I think the case may well go to July or August. There's one other point, Tom. And, I'm not sure. Well, listen, you and I are both mavericks. We're accustomed to talking about things people sometimes think we shouldn't talk about. But my friend Jerry Spence has said in recent days, he said, and I think this is a direct quote, "The dirty little secret about this trial is race." Well, that secret is out. That was a quote from Spence, which is to say that one of the things that makes this case worth paying attention to is the potential, mark the word, the potential is here to do tremendous damage to race relations in the country. Now, I'm an optimist by nature and by experience, and I believe that by the time this trial is over, that people will see that O.J. Simpson got a fair shake, that the victims, the late Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, got, in effect, their day in court, and that the system is going to work. But the potential is here for a great increase in racial misunderstandings and racial tensions.
Which by the way, I think
anything else may make this an important case.
Yeah, and by the way, I think that is the reason we are seeing the case being done with such meticulous care on the part of Judge Ito to leave absolutely no stone unturned in terms of giving what you just said a fair shake to all parties. I want to ask you here about Connie Chung in what I hope is a positive conversation, but I have a commercial waiting. We'll continue with Dan Rather and you along the toll-free highway right after these messages. We're back with Dan Rather from CBS News headquarters in New York, and on the phone line here is Christy in West Lafayette, Indiana. Hello.
Hi, Tom.
I'm fine, thanks.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Christy.
I have a question for you, Dan. I have seen you on David Letterman, and I've seen Ted Koppel go rollerblading with David Letterman, and, journalists doing kind of fun stuff like that. I just wanted to know, where do you guys draw the line as to what you think will hurt your credibility, or, how far do you go? Or, do you
we
think
understand. We got it, Christy. We got it.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a good question, Christy, and I think where you try to put the line, and it may be a shifting line from time to time, is I try to take my work seriously. I try not to take myself seriously. So being on David's program, sort of after hours, kicking back, singing a few train songs, having a few laughs, I can't see how it hurts. It certainly does wonders for my morale. I don't know what it does about credibility, but credibility for the journalist generally is built on a body of work, how accurate he or she has been, and how fair he or she has been. I think the public understands the difference. I hope they do. I tell you, I have a great time doing things such as this program and being on with David Letterman. For one thing, news is most of the time very serious business, and I like a chance to, as I say, kick back and smile a little.
Listen, I think it helps all of you, Brokaw when he's on there, and yourself, and Koppel, and Peter Jennings. I mean, we want to see you as real people. We know that you're trusted reporters. We know that you tried as best you can to tell us the truth every night, but we like to see you having fun. We realize you're human beings and that you might have a bourbon and branch now and again and tell a bawdy story now and again. We understand that, and I think it's good for all of you to do that. I like it. What do you think, Chris? What do you think, Christy?
I think it's great. I think it's fun. I mean, I think it's really funny, and I think it's nice to see you guys, that you have a sense of humor, too,
There you go. Christy, I'm glad you called. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
All right, bye-bye. As we look back with 20/20 hindsight on the brouhaha involving Connie Chung and Mrs. Gingrich, and now that we can hold it up to the light with some time having passed, it would seem to me that maybe that part of the interview should not have been run. What do you think?
Well, Tom, first of all, I know, and I know that you know, that all of my bosses and most of your bosses would prefer that we talk about almost anything else except this subject.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, that's too bad.
That's just tough.
Listen,
Dan, one of the beauties that you and I have, you do your program live at 6:30 in New York, right? And we do this live from 12:30 to 1:30. So for 90 minutes, my friend, you and I are the CBS television network. Not our bosses, not their bosses, not the stockholders. And by the way, I accept that responsibility with great reverence. But this is something people have been talking about.
Absolutely, and I think people deserve some answers. I watched, I think it was your first night, or maybe the second night. But
first night we have the Gingrich's on.
Gingrich is on, and I thought Mrs. Gingrich's husband said it pretty well. He said, time to move on. But I do think people are entitled to some answers. And look, Connie Chung is a great person. She's a very experienced broadcast journalist. And this I know, and this I want to bear witness to. Because, I am her friend in addition to being a co-anchor.
Me too. I know Connie. I know her husband, Maury Povich, for years, for heaven's sake.
That whatever happened, and however anybody views it, know that Connie's intentions were good. I think Connie had real good intentions. I've gotten to know Speaker Gingrich, and whatever one thinks about his word to describe the First Lady, whether you think it was inappropriate or not, he was decent intending. His intentions were not bad. I don't know his mother, but from what I can see and hear, I think she's a wonderful lady.
Could you tell me here for a second, Dan, excuse me, my friend, give me the part of the word bitch that has good intentions about it.
Well, I think it can be said humorously. I think it can be said offhandedly, and not have bad intentions to it. It's the sort of thing. Mark well. I don't think it should have been said. My point is that, again, whatever you think of it, that I don't think in that instance, at least, that Speaker Gingrich had any bad intentions. I think it was one of those situations in which everybody had maybe not their best day. Certainly CBS News didn't have our best day because, people do ask about it and they say, boy, what is this? Some people saw the interview and a lot of people didn't. But this much we do want people to know, that while I said before, we don't take ourselves seriously, we do take our work seriously, and particularly we take it seriously when it comes to things of integrity and ethics. So, for those who think that we handle the situation, CBS and Connie handled the situation bad, I can only say that, we've talked about it a lot, we've thought about it a lot, and, we say, look, it was a bad day, we'll try to do better.
The $64,000 question is, what effect will this incident have on the future career of Connie Chung at CBS News? Have you got a crystal ball on that one?
I don't. I, like you, Tom, I learned a long time ago, he who lives by the crystal ball learns to eat a lot of broken glass. Yeah. I have no idea. I absolutely have no idea.
What do we need Letterman for? Let's just put Dan on at 11:30. And how about like when this guy Army called him Barney Fagg? Now, do you think that was a slip of the tongue by any stretch of the imagination?
Well, Congressman Army, whom I also know, I don't know him well, but know him, I'm prepared to take him at his word. He has said repeatedly that it was a slip of the tongue. I think he's entitled to the benefit of the doubt.
Okay. We're with Dan Rather. We'll get to you more of your phone calls, I swear, at 800-95-CBS-TV. We'll be right back after these messages. Let me hear that, Dan. Tomorrow night, Alec Baldwin is here, and former Nixon aide John Ehrlichman, who I believe is one of the last survivors of the Watergate-era White House, at least, so that'll be tomorrow night. We're on the air here with Dan Rather from CBS News in New York, and here is another Dan, this time in Manhattan, Kansas. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, Dan. How are you?
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Well, thank you for making your call, and say hi to Dan Rather. He's all the way back in the other Manhattan.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Fine, thank you. A lot of people criticize the media for either having a predisposition for a liberal or a conservative slant on certain issues. Do you feel that that's justified in certain situations?
No, I don't. We make our mistakes. You said in certain situations. Listen, we make our mistakes. I've made scads of them, and I have the scars to show for it. But this is basically a canard used by politicians. And I understand why, because they want to blame somebody, anybody other than themselves, for people's anger and frustration. That it's one of the great political myths about press bias. Most reporters are interested in the story. Most reporters don't know whether they're Republican or Democrat and vote every which way. Now, a lot of politicians would like you to believe otherwise, but that's the truth of the matter. I've worked around journalism all of my life. Tom Snyder has as well, and I think he'll agree with this, that most reporters, when you get to know them, would fall in the general category of kind of common sense moderates. And also, let me say that I don't think, quote, liberal or, quote, conservative means very much anymore, except to those kind of inside the beltway people who want to use it for their own partisan political advantage.
Yeah,
I don't think it holds up.
I tend to agree, Dan, with what Mr. Rather says here, and I call him Mr. Rather only because I don't want to say Dan. It just...
Right.
But the thing that always comes back to me is I heard Walter Cronkite make a talk one time in which he said, you know, there have been all kinds of surveys about the bias of the news broadcaster, but no surveys at all on the bias of the people who watch and listen to radio and television news.
Right.
And it seems to me that if you're a big Nixon fan, if somebody does a pro-Nixon story, you're a perfectly legitimate reporter. But if somebody is marginally critical of Nixon, you're a Nixon hater. You know, because you have that bias in your head. That's all I have, Dan.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for calling. Let me ask you here, though, about this thing that they all call the swing to the right in the 1994 elections. Was that a swing to the right, or was that, as I sometimes think, a move towards the center and balancing the two branches of government, legislative by the Republicans, with the Democratic administration in the White House? I mean, the American people seem to like opposites that attract at each end of Pennsylvania Avenue.
You know, that's a very good point, Tom, and one I tell you frankly I hadn't really thought through. I tend to believe that those who voted in this last election did vote to take the country on a direct turn to the right, a hard turn to the right. Now, there's a lot of question in my mind about how far and how fast they want that turn to the right to go. But I think it's probably true that certainly in 20th century history, particularly post-World War II in this country, that Americans have tended to rather like the balance of power, to have the White House in the hands of one party and the Congress in the hands of another. Now, what's changed and what is undeniable is that for the almost all of the second half of this century up until now, with one exception, you did not have, maybe two, you did not have the House of Representatives in the hands of the Republicans. And that's where Newt Gingrich and his followers deserve a lot of credit. They organized, they got themselves focused, and they really did have a historic off-year election by getting the House of Representatives in Republican hands.
Here is Jessica in Chester, Pennsylvania. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi. It's nice to finally get through.
Yes, it is.
I'm 19 years old, and I'm I guess you could call a young fan. I'm very frustrated with the argument that Dr. Foster shouldn't be appointed to the Surgeon General position.
Right.
I was just wondering. I wanted to ask you, Dan, how do you feel about the idea that he won't get appointed because he performed abortions? Do you think this should be an issue when abortion is legal, regardless of people's outlook on abortion? Do you feel that this should have any,
bearing
on the decision?
Right. Well, first of all, I think it would not be realistic to fail to see that the nomination is in some trouble. He may get through, but it's in a lot of trouble. Now, here's where the nomination got in trouble. All of those issues that you raised are at play in this, and we know that passions run high on all sides of this issue.
Yeah.
But where it got in trouble was over the question of whether the truth had been told about what his record was when it came to performing abortions. And if he doesn't get approved, his nomination doesn't get approved, it will be because in the opening of the nomination and announcing the nomination that the truth wasn't told. Mark, well, I'm not saying it wasn't told. I'm saying that's the fulcrum over which it now is turning.
Yeah, there are some in the Congress, Jessica, who believe that Dr. Foster misstated the number of abortions with which he was involved, and that he is now changing his story as the nomination gets into trouble. I think I think Dan makes an excellent point. By the way, Jessica, you're 19 years old.
Yeah.
You know, you are truly the wrong demographic group for this audience.
Oh.
Because all the whiz kids back on Madison Avenue, I mean, everybody who watches is going to be 93 years old.
Oh, no. Well, call me unique. I think you're great, and Mr. Rather, you're my favorite newsman.
Thank you very much, Jessica. God bless you.
And by the way, Jessica, if you're not our favorite viewer, you're damn close to it.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Thank you so
Thank you very much, young lady, and have a nice evening.
Okay, you too.
All right. You know, the only other bone I have here is I asked you early on if you could make Frank Field of Channel 2 back there stop calling me before 9 o'clock in the morning, and you've had no success.
Well, that shows you where my influence begins.
It is always a pleasure, Dan. My best to your bride and your family. We think the world of you here, and I hope to see you in person very soon.
Thanks a lot, Tom, and to you and yours. Thanks a lot. Good night.
Okay. Good night, folks. No, not good night, folks. Good night, Dan. We want the folks to stay and Dan to go home and be with his family. Jeez, man. Tomorrow night we're playing that ABBA song in here. Well, what is it? I've been singing it all night here. Waterloo. Yeah. Tomorrow night we're playing Waterloo. And there's a symbolic meaning there. I like when Dan said, you know, Tom, you made a real good point there. One that I haven't given a lot of thought to. Probably that's the reason. We'll be right back with Roosevelt Grier after these messages. My next guest, Roosevelt Grier, is known equally for his pro football career, his acting, his community service, and his work as a novelist. In fact, his newest book is called Shooting Star. Like it or not, today Roosevelt Grier is also making news for his connection with O.J. Simpson. We welcome the Reverend Rosey Grier, who I've not seen for too long a time.
It's been quite a while.
I know that you were on with my colleague Larry King last night, and I know that a lot of people have heard your conversations about your meetings with O.J. Simpson, so I want to spend a bit on that, but then I'd like to get on to other stuff in your life, if that's okay. A lot of people, for whatever the reason, keep asking you whether O.J. Simpson has made any statements to you that might incriminate him. Why do you think people are so eager for that kind of information when they must know that you and O.J. would not involve yourselves in that kind of a conversation? That's not the essence of your relationship.
No, but that's the lust of man. Man wants to hear these kind of things. You want to be tantalized by these kind of accusations. And we don't talk about things like that. We talk about the Bible, we pray a lot, and he's never said anything that would incriminate him in any form or fashion. And that's why I was so surprised, because I was out of town when all this took place, and my wife told me that these things was happening. I said, what? And I thought, I mean, this got to be somebody really weird to pull something like that. Then when I came back home, they told me that I could only see him now once a week, and I've been seeing him for 5 months, twice a week. So I figured that was all about that, and it wasn't about anything else.
Now, I understand that you are now prohibited from visiting Mr. Simpson on Sundays. Is that correct?
Right, and that's the fight that I've been saying, that why shouldn't I? Because the Sabbath for Christians is Sunday.
Of course.
And why can't I minister on Sunday? And they said, no, you can't. And
I mean, I could understand Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Right.
But Sunday's a logical day for a minister to visit a member of his flock.
Absolutely. But more than that, because it's after he's been in court all day long, and then when you go to visit him, he's got all these things going. If he had one day off to rest, and then Sunday morning, when you minister, he'll be able to hear very easily.
Of course.
And so that's been the problem that I've been saying. Why can't this happen? And I've talked to the Board of Supervisors, some of them, and I've spoken to the sheriff a couple of times. And so what I like to do is pursue this, make sure that the church get behind this and that something can be done. If it's the law, it can be changed because there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to minister on Sunday.
By the way, if you need some help, let me know. I'm serious. Let me know.
I believe that.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the parallels of your life and O.J. Simpson's. Both kids who didn't have a lot of cash around the house. Both guys who made their way to stardom in the National Football League. You with the New York Giants, later with the Los Angeles Rams as a member of the Fearsome Foursome. You two do have a lot in common, and you go way back.
Well, I didn't know O.J. I watched O.J. when he played in college, but we never ran around together. I never knew him in that period of time.
No, I understand that.
I knew about him. I had a lot of respect for his ability as an athlete and the kind of thing he was doing, community service and all those things. I really admired him for all those things he was doing to help people and things like that. But I didn't really know him until I saw in the media that he was, what he was going through. And particularly the suicide watch they had on him, that's when I realized that I have been that depressed in my life. And I realized that if I could get to him and share my experience, plus the realization that I came to my knowledge of who I am in the Lord, that I could help him to find a foundation for him to stand on through all of these troubles that he was in.
Right.
That it was just a matter of time that he could stand up.
America knows that you were a friend, more than a friend, to Robert F. Kennedy and his family. That you were there the night that he died at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles in 1968. But I'd like to ask you about the night after, and your evening with the family the night after RFK was gunned down by Sirhan here in Los Angeles. What happened the night after?
Well, they went back to New York.
Yeah.
They the next day, all the people. I was at home, and they were all getting on the plane to go back to New York. They went back to New York, and I got a call that they wanted me to come to New York. And so when I went to New York, I went to the apartment in New York, and everyone was sitting around talking, and there was various people on TV talking and about what had happened. And it was just, to me, it was like the saddest moment of my life. It was my very first time I've ever gotten involved in a political campaign. And Bobby, to me, was the man that I thought could save America. I felt like America needed someone who had the ability to cross all spectrums. Blacks and whites, they all looked up to him. They admired the family.
True. And by the way, for the young folks who are watching, in 1968, this country was literally torn apart by a variety of factions, but essentially those who believed that the war in Vietnam was sinful and those who believed the war in Vietnam was a just cause. And it was a very difficult time in America, and Robert Kennedy was running on a platform to end the war in Vietnam.
Absolutely. And the other thing was, that was a period of time when nobody wanted to have police protection. And so what we had to do was to get Bobby through the crowds and the best we could. And but we didn't know anything about protecting people. And
crowd control, right.
Right. So what we were doing the best we could and try to line up people and things like that. And so when this incident happened, the bedlam that took place, you realize that it's a blessing in this respect that today the people who run for these offices, they are covered by the Secret Service because they have preconceived plans on how to act when these things happen.
Now, from your friendship with Robert Kennedy and his family, did not your friendship with Jacqueline Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis later on, it began there, didn't it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I met Jackie in the hospital in Los Angeles. And then I ended up in Hyannisport, and we were playing football, and there was a little kid running between my legs. And I said to Rafer, I said, who's this little kid, Rafer?
Rafer Johnson, right?
Rafer Johnson. And Rafer said, that's John. And so after the game was over, he reintroduced me to Jackie. And so I said to Jackie, I'm going to be up here for a whole week, and I don't have anyone to hang out with, so it's got to be you and I. And we started laughing, so we went inside, and she said, what do I have to do? So I said, come on, let's go sit down and talk about it. So we sat down, and we decided that we were going to challenge everyone to a game. And so we wrote notes to the Secret Service, wrote notes to the families, and we challenged them to running.
You can't beat us at tennis, yeah.
And so it was. She was a really fun lady. I mean, I really appreciate her. I've never met a lady that I admired and loved more than her. She was a wonderful friend.
We are with Roosevelt Grier in Los Angeles. We'll be joined by all of you on the toll-free exchange at 800-95-CBS-TV. I'm Tom. This is the simulcast. We'll be right back after a short break. Just one more question about dear Jackie. You must have been devastated, as we all were, at the suddenness of her passing.
No question about it.
Yeah.
My wife called me, and
I mean, Rosey, just out of the blue, she's going to die.
Yeah. I didn't realize how sick she was because I'd called her. I wanted her to do something else. We were having an event over at the 21 Club over in New York, and I wanted to. And I wanted her to do something there. And Nancy Tuckerman said she didn't feel well. She had been in the treatment, and she wasn't feeling well. And I was really disappointed, and I had no idea. Then I was in Cincinnati, and I saw all these people coming out of her apartment. And I began to call around. I called Hyannisport to find out why they all went to New York. I called Washington. They went to New York, and I felt so bad because I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know what. No, I couldn't get no one. And so then late that night, my wife called me, and she said, Jackie died. And in fact, I had gotten a call from a television station. They said that we'd like to be able to locate you because we expect something to happen. And I tell you, I was just couldn't believe it when it happened. And I didn't want to talk to nobody.
I understand. There was Pope John Paul who died 30 days after being named Pope, and then there was John Paul II. And when the Pope died after 30 days of being in the chair, they quoted a Catholic priest saying, we're a little upset with God today. And I thought that was a nice way for a man of the cloth to put it when somebody as dear as the Pope dies in 30 days. And at the day that Jackie died, I was a little bit upset with God that day, just a little.
But it wasn't God that caused her to die.
No, I understand that.
I mean, that wasn't God's best. God was desire for her to live, and to have the time she spent on earth. She did her work, and so she had to go and be with the Father. So it was okay. I mean, I could understand that part. Now, death isn't the last of it. That's only the beginning.
Here is Julia on the toll-free from Ava, Missouri. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, good evening, Julie.
Good evening. My question is, I don't mean to harp on the deal with O.J. Simpson because I certainly believe that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
But I was wondering, since I don't live in a black community, if he is convicted, do you think there's going to be riots?
I don't see where there should be riots. I don't believe he's going to be convicted. I think he's innocent.
Yeah.
But the answer is no. He doesn't think there will be riots. And I think that I would hope that this trial, as Dan Rather and I talked about, will be conducted in such a way that whatever the verdict is, for people who have watched the trial, they will feel that O.J. Simpson has been given justice.
Yes, I do too.
That's the word, key word there you got to remember, justice we're looking for.
There you go. There you go. Anything else, Julie?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Now, you're in Ava, Missouri?
Uh-huh.
Is there a Jaja, Missouri?
I don't know.
A Magda, Missouri?
I don't know.
Good night, Julie, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I know that you and your wife do a lot of work with young people in this city and others, and that you're committed to offering them hope for the future. How is that mission going? How are we doing with giving young people in the inner city, young African Americans, Hispanics, and white kids, hope that the American dream can work for them?
Consistency is the key. I mean, a lot of times people go in the community, they start up these programs, and they abandon the kids after a while. Yeah. I went out in 1972 and started working with the kids, and I've been there ever since. And the purpose was to show these kids that I was there. I said, the rest of my life, I'll be in the community. We work with various organizations. We work with one called Stitches, run by Zonell Thompson, Keith Phillips, the World Impact, and there's other organizations that work with Brian Weaver and Big Al and all these folks.
But consistency is the key. You've got to be there.
You've got to be consistent with these kids. You've got to be consistent in your attitude. I have a lot of time white said, I would go with you, but man, how do I relate? And I had a young fellow from...
Listen, before you start the story, I'm down to time here, but you're there all the time and you're consistent in your approach to those kids. Yes. I thank you for coming on here tonight. It's been far too long since I've seen you, and I hope our paths cross again very soon.
Thank you.
My great pleasure. Roosevelt Grier, folks. We'll be right back to wrap it up for late on Wednesday, early on Thursday, right after these messages. I hate to interrupt you there. Tomorrow night we have Alec Baldwin and John Ehrlichman here. Stay tuned now for Elliot Forrest on the Late Late Radio Show with Sherry Lewis and Tom at 1-800-890-9990. We're looking for a call tonight from our friend Dave on WHBY in Appleton, Wisconsin. Dave, give us a call. Back tomorrow night, same time, same station. Drive safely on the way home. Thank you all for watching, and sleep tight, America. Good night, everybody.